I still remember the smell of cinnamon and nutmeg filling our kitchen that Thanksgiving evening. I was 22, carefully arranging the sweet potato casserole while watching my sister Sarah through the corner of my eye. She was fidgeting with her phone, that familiar nervous energy crackling around her like static electricity. Something felt different that night, though I could not put my finger on what it was. The way she kept glancing at our parents, the forced brightness in her laugh. I should have trusted my instincts. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if this story resonates with you. Now let me take you back to that night when everything changed. Our family seemed picture perfect from the outside. We lived in a comfortable two-story house in suburban Ohio, complete with a white picket fence and a golden retriever named Buster. Dad Robert worked as an accountant for a local firm, methodical and reliable as clockwork. At 52, he still wore the same style of wire-rimmed glasses he had worn since college. Mom Linda was a nurse at the county hospital, always ready with a bandage for scraped knees or a warm hug after a bad day. At 49, she maintained that gentle strength that made everyone feel safe around her. Sarah, my older sister at 24, had always been the golden child. Born 2 years before me, she possessed a natural charisma that drew people to her like moths to a flame. Teachers adored her, neighbors praised her, and our parents beamed with pride whenever her name came up in conversation. She had this ability to make everyone believe whatever story she told, complete with tears on demand and innocent doe eyes that could melt the hardest heart. I was different. While Sarah commanded attention effortlessly, I preferred working behind the scenes. After graduating college with a marketing degree, I had been saving every penny to open my own small business. $22,000 sat in our family savings account, money I had contributed over the past year, working double shifts at a local restaurant. It was supposed to help with house repairs, but everyone knew I was planning to use my portion for my entrepreneurial dreams. The trouble started 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Sarah had developed what we would later understand was a serious gambling addiction, playing online poker and buying lottery tickets with money she did not have. She had also been shopping compulsively, filling her closet with designer clothes, while maxing out credit cards our parents did not know about. When the bank statement arrived, showing $22,000 missing from the family account, Sarah struck like lightning. She came to our parents with tears streaming down her face, clutching printed emails that appeared to be from the bank. The documents showed my name as the account holder who had made the withdrawal. She had somehow manipulated the records, creating a paper trail that pointed directly to me. Her masterpiece was a photograph of me holding what looked like our family ATM card, though it was actually her card positioned at just the right angle to hide the name. "I cannot believe Haley would do this to us," she sobbed, her voice breaking in all the right places. "She threatened me not to tell anyone. Said she needed the money to pay off gambling debts from some online casino. I was so scared of what she might do if I said anything." The accusation hit our kitchen like a bomb explosion. Dad dropped his coffee mug, the ceramic shattering across the linoleum floor. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. I stood frozen by the refrigerator, my brain struggling to process what I was hearing. "That is absolutely not true," I stammered, my voice sounding weak even to my own ears. "I have never gambled in my life. I do not even know how to play poker." But Sarah had prepared for my denials. She produced more evidence, browser history printed from what she claimed was my laptop, showing visits to gambling websites. Screenshots of online conversations with people I had never met discussing debts and payment schedules. Each piece of fabricated evidence was more damning than the last. "Look at her," Sarah whispered, pointing at me with a trembling finger. She is not even trying to deny it convincingly. This is exactly how she acted when I confronted her about it last week. Our parents sat at the kitchen table, the evidence spread before them like a prosecutor's case file. Dad studied each document through his glasses, his face growing more disappointed with every page. Mom kept shaking her head, murmuring, "I just cannot understand this," over and over again. I tried explaining that anyone could fake email headers, that the photographs could be manipulated, that Sarah had access to my laptop and could have created the browser history herself. But my explanation sounded desperate, even paranoid. Sarah, meanwhile, maintained her composure perfectly, occasionally wiping away a tear, while nodding sadly at my words. "I know this is hard to accept," she said softly to our parents, "but Haley has been acting strange for months. Staying out late, being secretive about her phone calls, getting defensive when anyone asked about her plans." Every word she spoke contained just enough truth to be believable. I had been working extra shifts, which meant staying out late. I had been secretive about my business plans because I wanted them to be a surprise. I had been defensive because I was stressed about my future. As the evening wore on, I watched my family slip away from me piece by piece. Dad's disappointment settled into his features like deep carved lines. Mom's confusion transformed into hurt, then anger. They began looking at me differently, as if seeing a stranger in their daughter's place. "We need that money back. Haley," Dad said finally, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. "Your mother and I have bills to pay, repairs that cannot wait. I do not have the money because I did not take it," I insisted, my voice rising with frustration. "Sarah is lying to you." The accusation hung in the air between us, poisonous and final. Sarah's face crumpled, as if I had physically struck her. "How can you say that?" Mom demanded, moving protectively toward Sarah. "Your sister is trying to help us understand what happened, and you are attacking her." That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every interaction with Sarah over the past few months. I remembered her asking to borrow my laptop for school research. I recalled her curiosity about my work schedule, my savings goals, my future plans. Every innocent question now took on a sinister meaning. But even as the pieces fell into place, I knew no one would believe me. Sarah had constructed her lie too perfectly, with too much detail and too much emotion for our parents to doubt. They saw her as their responsible older daughter, and me as someone who had inexplicably lost her way. The following week brought a second wave of devastating evidence. Sarah claimed to have found lottery scratch-off tickets worth $500 hidden in my bedroom, tucked behind books on my shelf. She presented them to our parents with the same tearful reluctance, as if the discovery pained her deeply. "I was looking for a book Haley said I could borrow," she explained, holding the tickets like they burned her fingers. "I found these hidden behind her college textbooks. There must be dozens of them." I stared at the tickets in horror. They were losing tickets, worthless pieces of paper that Sarah must have planted during one of her visits to my room. But to our parents, they represented proof of the gambling addiction Sarah had invented for me. I have never bought a lottery ticket in my entire life. I protested, but my words fell on deaf ears. Dad examined the tickets with the same methodical attention he brought to tax returns. "These purchase dates go back months, Haley. This was not some recent mistake." Each ticket bore dates spanning the past 4 months, creating a timeline of fictional addiction that aligned perfectly with Sarah's story. She had planned this frame job with the precision of a chess grandmaster, thinking several moves ahead while I remained oblivious to the game being played. Mom confronted me that evening while Dad was at work, and Sarah conveniently had evening classes. We sat in the living room, where family photos smiled down at us from every surface, capturing happier times when trust filled the spaces between us. "I need you to be honest with me," Mom said, her nurse training, making her voice gentle but firm. "We can get you help for this addiction, but first you have to admit you have a problem." "Mom, I swear on everything I hold sacred, I did not take that money. I have never gambled. Someone is setting me up." "Who would do that?" "Honey, who else had access to our accounts?" The obvious answer sat between us, unspoken but heavy as lead. Sarah had access to everything: my laptop, my room, the family banking information, even my daily schedule. But suggesting my sister was capable of such elaborate deception felt like accusing someone of witchcraft in a room full of believers. I know this is difficult, Mom continued, but the evidence is overwhelming. The bank records the tickets, the browser history on your computer. We are not angry, sweetheart. We are just worried about you. Their concern felt worse than anger. I could have fought against rage, defended myself against accusations. But their gentle disappointment wrapped around me like quicksand, pulling me deeper into helplessness with every struggle. The breaking point came during my 23rd birthday party. What should have been a celebration became a family intervention. They had invited only immediate family, claiming they wanted an intimate gathering. Instead, they presented me with an ultimatum. "We have been patient," Dad said, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "We have given you time to come clean, to show some remorse, to at least acknowledge what you have done." Sarah sat beside Mom on the couch, her expression sorrowful but supportive, as if she truly wished things could be different. She had become the perfect victim and the loving sister simultaneously, somehow managing to play both roles without anyone noticing the contradiction. "This behavior cannot continue," Mom added, her voice breaking slightly. "We cannot have someone in this house who steals from family and lies about it." The birthday cake sat untouched on the coffee table, 23 candles slowly melting into colorful wax pools. I thought about making a wish, but what could I wish for? The truth to magically reveal itself? My family to suddenly believe me over my silver-tongued sister? "I need you to move out," Dad said finally. "Until you can admit what you have done and make things right, you are not welcome here." The words hit me like physical blows. I looked around the room where I had spent 23 years of birthday celebrations, Christmas mornings, and countless family movie nights. Every corner held memories that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. "You are disowning me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We are giving you space to figure things out," Mom corrected, though her eyes were red with unshed tears. "When you are ready to be honest with us, we will be here." Sarah reached across the space between us, her hand touching mine with feigned gentleness. "I know you are hurting, Haley. When you are ready to get help, I will support you through it." Her touch felt like fire against my skin. In that moment, I saw a flash of something behind her concerned expression, a satisfaction so brief, I almost missed it. She had won completely, and we both knew it. I packed my belongings that night in the rain-filling cardboard boxes with the remnants of my life while thunder rolled overhead. Sarah stood at her bedroom window on the second floor, watching as I loaded my car. When I looked up, she raised her hand in a small wave, and I caught that same satisfied smile she thought no one could see. My parents stayed inside, unable to watch their daughter leave, but unwilling to stop it from happening. I drove away from the house where I had grown up, windshield wipers fighting against tears and rain in equal measure. The rented room I found across town was small and depressing, with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. But it was mine, paid for with money I had saved from my restaurant job money that represented honesty and hard work, rather than lies and manipulation. For weeks I continued trying to prove my innocence. I contacted the bank requesting detailed records and transaction histories. I brought my laptop to a computer specialist, hoping to find evidence of tampering. I even hired a private investigator with money I could not afford to spend. But Sarah had been too careful. The bank records showed legitimate withdrawals using proper access codes and identification. My laptop showed a clear history of gambling-related searches and downloads, created when I was at work and had no access to the computer. The private investigator found nothing suspicious in Sarah's behavior or finances, nothing that could not be explained by student loans and part-time work. I wrote letters to my parents, long, heartfelt explanations that went unanswered. I called Mom at the hospital, but she would not take my calls. I even tried approaching Dad at his office, but security escorted me out at his request. The worst part was not just losing my family, but watching Sarah solidify her position as the good daughter. Through social media, I saw photos of her helping mom with garden work, accompanying dad to baseball games, being everything I had supposedly failed to become. My 23rd birthday marked 6 months since the accusations began. I spent it alone in my small room, eating grocery store cake, and wondering how someone I had loved and trusted could destroy my life so completely. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would build a new life so far from Ohio that my past could never reach me. I left for Denver, Colorado with $800 a car that barely ran and a determination born from absolute loss. The city felt like the opposite of everything I had known. Mountain peaks instead of flat farmland, thin air instead of humid summers, strangers instead of people who whispered about my supposed crimes. My first job was at a small coffee shop called Mountain Brew, where the owner Janet hired me, despite my obvious desperation. She was a woman in her 60s who had moved to Colorado after her own family troubles, and she recognized the look of someone running from pain. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she told me on my first day, not knowing that I had never needed a first chance to begin with. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised everyone, including myself. I learned every aspect of the coffee business: how to operate the espresso machines, manage inventory, handle difficult customers with grace. More importantly, I began studying digital marketing during every spare moment. The local library became my second home. I spent hours learning about social media marketing, search engine optimization, content creation, and online business strategies. The skills I had developed in college felt rusty, but they provided a foundation for building something entirely new. By my second year in Denver, I had started a blog called Mountain Life Simplified, sharing tips about minimalist living budget, friendly outdoor activities, and finding happiness after major life changes. I never mentioned my family situation directly, but readers seemed to sense an authenticity in my writing that came from genuine experience with loss and rebuilding. The blog grew slowly but steadily. I partnered with outdoor gear companies for affiliate marketing, created sponsored content for local businesses, and eventually started offering digital marketing consultations to small business owners who needed help establishing online presences. Janet noticed my entrepreneurial activities and became my first business mentor, sharing wisdom about customer service, financial planning, and the importance of treating people with kindness regardless of their circumstances. "You have something special," she told me during my third year at the coffee shop. "You understand people who are starting over because you have been there yourself." By year 4, my digital marketing side business was earning more than my coffee shop salary. I hired my first employee, a recent college graduate named Daria, who shared my passion for helping small businesses succeed. We rented a tiny office space above a used bookstore, furnished it with secondhand desks, and officially launched Alpine Digital Solutions. The company grew because we genuinely cared about our clients' success. We worked with local restaurants struggling to attract customers, artists trying to sell their work online, and service providers who needed help building professional websites. Every client felt like family, and every success story reminded me that I was capable of building something meaningful from nothing. During year 5, I met Marcus at a networking event for young professionals. He was a graphic designer with kind eyes and a laugh that made everyone around him smile. Unlike the people from my past, Marcus saw me exactly as I was, someone who had worked hard to build a life worth living. We fell in love gradually through shared coffee dates and long conversations about our dreams for the future. When I finally told him about my family situation, he listened without judgment and held me while I cried for the relationships I had lost. "Your family does not define you," he said simply. "The life you have built, the person you choose to be every day, that is who you really are." By year 6, Alpine Digital Solutions employed 5 people and had attracted clients from across the region. I had purchased a small house with a view of the mountains, adopted a rescue dog named Scout, and built friendships with people who valued honesty, hard work, and authenticity. Marcus and I had gotten engaged on a hiking trip to Rocky Mountain National Park, with no family present, but surrounded by friends who had become our chosen family. Life felt complete in a way I had never experienced, built on a foundation of truth rather than manipulation. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October, my phone rang with a number I had not seen in 6 years. "Haley!" Mom's voice sounded older, smaller than I remembered. "Honey, can you talk?" My hands began shaking before she finished saying my name. I sat down heavily on my office chair, looking out at the mountains, while my past crashed into my present like a collision between two worlds. "What is wrong?" I asked, though part of me already knew this call meant something terrible had happened. "It is about Sarah," Mom said, and I heard Dad's voice in the background telling her to explain everything. "She left Haley. She abandoned Emma and just disappeared." Emma. I had seen photos of Sarah's daughter on social media over the years, a beautiful little girl with dark curls, and Sarah's same expressive eyes. She was 3 years old, the same age I had been when Sarah first learned to manipulate adults with her tears and stories. "When did this happen?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. 2 months ago. She left a note saying she could not handle being a mother anymore, that she needed to find herself. Emma has been staying with us, but your father had a mild heart attack last week from the stress, and I cannot manage everything alone. The conversation continued, but I heard it as if from underwater. Sarah had finally abandoned someone who could not defend themselves against her selfishness, just as she had abandoned me 6 years earlier. But this time she had left behind an innocent child who needed protection from the chaos Sarah created wherever she went. "Haley," Mom said, her voice breaking completely, "we were wrong about everything. We found some things after Sarah left, financial records and emails that show. We know you were telling the truth all along." 6 years of vindication arrived in a single sentence, but it felt hollow rather than triumphant. I had built a life beyond needing their validation, beyond requiring their apology to know my own worth. "We need your help." Dad's voice came through the phone, probably on speaker now. "We do not have anyone else to turn to. Emma needs stability, and we cannot provide that alone anymore." I looked around my office at the business I had built, from nothing at the life I had created through determination and honesty. Everything I had accomplished had been possible only because I had learned to depend on myself rather than waiting for others to believe in me. "I will drive to Ohio this weekend," I said finally, "but we need to have some very honest conversations about what happened and what happens next." That night I sat with Marcus on our back porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. He listened while I explained the situation, offering support without trying to make the decision for me. "What does your heart tell you to do?" he asked. "It tells me that little girl deserves better than what Sarah gave her," I replied. "And maybe it is time to find out if my family can learn to deserve better too." The drive to Ohio took 14 hours, giving me plenty of time to prepare for conversations I had imagined having for 6 years. Marcus came with me, his calm presence providing anchor points when my emotions threatened to overwhelm my judgment. Walking into my childhood home felt surreal, like visiting a museum dedicated to someone else's memories. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, older and more worn. The family photos still covered the walls, but I noticed new ones featuring Emma and conspicuously fewer featuring Sarah from recent years. Dad looked frailer than his 58 years, his hair now completely gray, and his face bearing new lines that spoke of worry and regret. Mom had aged too, but she moved toward me with tentative hope, as if testing whether I might disappear if she approached too quickly. "Haley," she whispered, tears already flowing, "we are so sorry." Emma sat on the living room floor playing with blocks while watching this reunion with 3-year-old curiosity. She had Sarah's dark hair, but different eyes, more open and trusting than her mother had ever possessed. We sat around the same kitchen table where Sarah had presented her fabricated evidence 6 years earlier. This time, Dad spread different papers across the Surface Bank records, showing Sarah's actual gambling debts, credit card statements, revealing thousands of dollars in hidden purchases and emails between Sarah and various online casinos. We found these in her room after she left. Dad explained, his voice heavy with shame, along with a notebook where she had practiced different versions of the story she told us about you. The notebook was the most damning evidence of all. Page after page of Sarah's handwriting, working out details of the lies she would tell, rehearsing emotional responses, planning the placement of fake evidence. She had approached destroying my reputation with the same methodical planning most people used for business presentations. "There is more," Mom said quietly. She showed me emails between Sarah and a private investigator she had hired, not to investigate me but to help her create more convincing false evidence. She spent almost $3,000 making sure we would never believe you. I studied the papers with a strange sense of detachment. After 6 years of building a life based on my own merits, Sarah's manipulations felt like artifacts from someone else's story. The vindication I had once desperately craved now seemed almost irrelevant. "Why did you not find any of this before?" I asked. "Because we were not looking," Dad admitted. "We trusted Sarah completely, and we wanted to believe that our family problems had simple explanations." Emma wandered over during our conversation, climbing onto Dad's lap with the easy affection of a child who felt safe in his presence. She studied me with frank curiosity, perhaps sensing that I represented some change in her small world. "Are you my Aunt Haley?" she asked, her voice carrying Sarah's inflections, but none of her calculation. "Yes, I am," I replied, and felt something shift in my chest. This little girl was innocent of her mother's crimes, deserving of love and stability, regardless of the circumstances that brought us together. Over the next several hours, we talked through everything that had happened. My parents apologized repeatedly, their regret genuine but unable to undo 6 years of lost time. They shared their struggles with Emma's care, Dad's health problems, and their growing realization that Sarah had been lying about many things for many years. "We understand if you cannot forgive us," Mom said as evening approached. "We failed you terribly, and we know that trust cannot be rebuilt overnight." I looked around the kitchen, remembering both happy memories and painful ones. The room held my entire childhood, but it no longer felt like home in the way my house in Colorado did. "I forgive you," I said finally. "But forgiveness does not mean returning to the way things were. Too much has changed, and we are all different people now." We discussed practical arrangements for Emma's care. I proposed bringing her to Colorado, where I could provide stability while maintaining the life I had built. Marcus and I had already discussed this possibility during our drive, and he had enthusiastically supported the idea of expanding our family. "She needs consistency more than anything," I explained, "and she needs to be protected from Sarah's influence if and when she decides to return." Dad's lawyer helped us establish temporary guardianship arrangements, ensuring that Sarah could not simply reappear and reclaim Emma without demonstrating genuine change and stability. I had learned enough about legal protections during my 6 years of independence to insist on ironclad safeguards. The hardest part was explaining the situation to Emma in terms a 3-year-old could understand. We told her that she would be living with me for a while, that her mommy was sick and needed time to get better, and that everyone who loved her wanted to make sure she felt safe and happy. "Will you read me stories?" she asked, the question revealing what mattered most to her small world. "Every night," I promised, and meant it completely. 2 weeks later, Marcus and I drove back to Colorado with Emma sleeping in a car seat between us, her favorite stuffed elephant clutched tightly in her arms. She had adapted to the transition with remarkable resilience, perhaps because children possess an instinctive understanding of who genuinely cares for their well-being. Integrating Emma into our life required adjustments, but Marcus embraced his role as a father figure with natural kindness. We enrolled her in an excellent preschool, child-proofed our house, and began building the kind of stable, loving environment every child deserves. My parents visited monthly, slowly rebuilding relationships with both Emma and me. The process was gradual and sometimes difficult, requiring honest conversations about past mistakes and future boundaries. But Emma's presence provided a bridge between our different perspectives, reminding all of us that some things matter more than pride or past hurts. Sarah attempted to return 8 months later, appearing at my parents' house with a new boyfriend and elaborate explanations for her absence. But by then, we had established legal guardianship, and I had documented Emma's flourishing development in our care. When Sarah demanded to see her daughter, I met her in a supervised setting with lawyers present. She looked older, worn down by whatever life she had been living, but her eyes still held that familiar calculation as she sized up the situation. "You cannot keep me from my own child," she insisted, turning on tears with practiced ease. "I am not keeping you from anything," I replied calmly. "You chose to abandon Emma. Now, if you want to be part of her life, you need to prove that you can provide stability and put her needs before your own." The legal requirements I had established were straightforward. Sarah needed to complete addiction counseling, maintain steady employment for at least 6 months, undergo psychological evaluation, and demonstrate genuine commitment to Emma's well-being rather than treating her as a possession to be reclaimed. Sarah stormed out of that first meeting unwilling to accept accountability for her choices. She made several more attempts to assert parental rights through lawyers, but each effort failed when faced with documentation of her abandonment and Emma's thriving development in our care. 3 years have passed since Emma came to live with us, and she has blossomed into a confident, happy 6-year-old who loves hiking in the mountains and helping Marcus design graphics on his computer. She calls us by our first names, but treats us as her primary family, understanding that love is demonstrated through consistency rather than genetics. My relationship with my parents has stabilized into something healthier than what existed before the crisis. We maintain regular contact, but I no longer need their approval to validate my choices. They respect the boundaries I have established, and they have learned to appreciate the strength I developed during my years of independence. Alpine Digital Solutions has continued growing, now employing 12 people and serving clients across multiple states. I have started a nonprofit component of the business, providing free digital marketing services to organizations that support women and children leaving difficult situations. Every client we help reminds me that setbacks can become foundations for building something better. Marcus and I married in a small ceremony in our backyard, with Emma serving as flower girl and my parents attending alongside the chosen family we had built in Colorado. The celebration felt complete without Sarah's presence, proof that happiness does not require including people who bring chaos and pain into your life. Emma occasionally asks about her birth mother, and I answer her questions honestly but gently. She knows that Sarah was not ready to be a good parent, and that sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they should protect. But she also knows that she is loved unconditionally by the family that chose to prioritize her well-being. Sarah has made sporadic attempts to contact us over the years, usually during holidays or Emma's birthday. Her messages alternate between demands for access and apologies that feel calculated rather than genuine. I respond only when necessary for legal reasons, maintaining the boundaries that protect Emma from manipulation. Last month, Emma asked me why some families are different from others, why some children live with people who are not their birth parents. We talked about how families are created through love and commitment, rather than just biology, and how sometimes the people who choose to love you are more important than the people who happen to share your genetics. "I am glad you chose me," she said simply, and I realized that this little girl had taught me more about forgiveness and healing than all my years of therapy and self-reflection combined. The lessons I have learned through this experience go far beyond family dynamics. I discovered that other people's validation, while nice to receive, is not necessary for living authentically. I learned that setting boundaries is an act of love both for yourself and for the people in your life who deserve your best efforts. Most importantly, I learned that the family you create can be more meaningful than the family you inherit. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 6 years I spent separated from my parents, if I wish I had tried harder to convince them of my innocence. The answer is complicated because those years of independence taught me who I really was, beneath the roles other people had assigned to me. I discovered that I was stronger, more capable, and more resilient than I had ever imagined possible. Building a life from nothing after losing everything taught me skills I never would have developed otherwise. It forced me to rely on my own judgment, to trust my instincts, and to distinguish between people who genuinely cared about my well-being and those who only wanted to use me for their own purposes. Emma represents the best possible outcome of this painful journey. She is growing up in an environment where honesty is valued over manipulation, where consistency matters more than charm, and where love is demonstrated through actions rather than words. She will never doubt that she is wanted and protected, because every choice we make prioritizes her security and happiness. My parents have become better grandparents to Emma than they ever were parents to Sarah and me, perhaps because they learned from their mistakes about blindly trusting without verification. They have also learned to appreciate qualities like independence and strength that they once saw as threatening to family harmony. As for Sarah, I hope she eventually finds peace and learns to take responsibility for her choices. But her journey toward healing cannot come at the expense of Emma's safety and stability. Some bridges once burned through deliberate cruelty cannot be rebuilt simply because time has passed. The most profound realization I have reached is that forgiveness does not require forgetting, and love does not mean accepting treatment that damages your well-being. You can wish someone well from a distance while protecting yourself from their continued ability to cause harm. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from family members who expect unlimited chances to prove they have changed. Today, when I look at Emma playing in our backyard while Marcus works on his latest design project, and Scout chases squirrels around the apple tree we planted last spring, I feel grateful for every difficult step that led us to this moment. The pain of betrayal taught me to value genuine loyalty. The experience of loss taught me to appreciate what truly matters. The necessity of rebuilding taught me that I was capable of creating something beautiful from nothing. What happened to me was not fair, and it should not have been necessary for my growth as a person. But since it did happen, I choose to find meaning in the experience rather than remaining bitter about circumstances I cannot change. Emma will grow up knowing that adults can be trusted to protect her, that her worth is not dependent on other people's opinions, and that resilience is one of the most valuable qualities a person can develop. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the permission to walk away from situations and people that diminish our light, even when those people are supposed to love us unconditionally. Family is not just about blood relations, but about creating environments where everyone can flourish and become their best selves. Tell me in the comments below, have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely, and how did you find the strength to rebuild your life afterward? If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges and finding healing after deep hurt. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are stronger than their worst experiences and worthy of love that does not come with conditions. Thank you for taking this journey with me today, and remember that your story is still being written. The next chapter can be filled with more hope, love, and authenticity than anything that came before. Until next time, keep believing in your ability to create the life you truly deserve.